Hello, everyone. God bless you on this Thanksgiving. I hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm coming to you live because I found an article on LifeSite News about an analyst who has reviewed CDC statistics on the thing that won't be named. I'm not going to name it because if I do, YouTube will suppress this video, possibly even delete it, possibly even delete my account. So I'm going to call it the you know what. Okay, the you know what, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We have been, to put it frankly, we've been swindled. I think in many cases, um, more and more there's data coming out. More and more there's evidence that shows that this is not even close to what is being described in the mainstream media. This is not even close to what we've been hearing. Um, we have been led into a kind of a panicked state, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. People who want to control societies and to control peoples for a long time have used fear to do it. Fear, social division, all of this can lead to disruption in society, and disruption can lead to change. And the people who have the power, the people who are in control behind the scenes, will use that disruption to bring about their kind of change, to create society in their image, right? We've all heard about the Great Reset and the Build Back Better, stuff like that, the new normal. Well, this doesn't sit well with me at all. Okay. I see a lot of danger in this. And the you know what is being used and has been used as a pretext to bring about these changes. And these changes are not good. We're talking about Marxism. We're talking about socialism. We're talking about communism. We're talking about globalism. Okay. You are not going to like these changes. And it's time that we arm ourselves with the facts and stand up and put a stop to this. Of course, we need to become prayer warriors. Of course, we need to turn to our Lord Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. Of course, God is in control, but He also calls us to do our part, right? And we need to work for justice. We've been served a great injustice. Businesses have been destroyed by the thousands. About half of small businesses in America have gone under as a result of this. Our rights to religious worship have been severely and unjustly restricted. And they're going to continue with this. Trust me. They are going to keep this up as long as they can to serve their narrative and to serve their agenda. And we need to stand together as Christians, as Catholics. Catholics are Christians. We need to stand together, stand up, and we need to resist this control, this disproportionate control, as Archbishop Vigano has termed it. Well, I want to read you an article that just came out on LifeSite News. This article is from a Johns Hopkins University academic. Her name is Dr. Genevieve Briand, I'm sorry, Dr. Genevieve Briand. I may be mispronouncing her name. But as I said earlier, the evidence is piling on that we have been swindled, okay? We've been duped. And we need to arm ourselves with the data and with the facts, okay? So I just want to read this article to you. She has discovered some very revealing and interesting information. And everywhere where this thing is mentioned, I'm just going to say, you know what, all right? And you know what I'm talking about. So here we go. Washington, D.C., November 27th, 2020, LifeSite News. Using statistical analysis, a senior lecturer from Johns Hopkins University, JHU, has demonstrated that you know what has resulted in no excess deaths, yet the university has censored the article online. Dr. Genevieve Briand, the Assistant Director of MS in Applied Economics, gave a video lecture in which she examined the deaths due to you know what and deaths overall in the US. Her findings were compiled in an article in the JHU newsletter, which has since been removed by the university. In a tweet, JHU stated that the article was deleted because it was, quote, being used to support false and dangerous inaccuracies about the impact of the you know what. We regret that this article may have contributed to the spread of misinformation about you know what, end quote. In the lecture, using data drawn from the Centers for Disease Control website, Briand noted that the deaths of older people stayed the same before and after you know what. This finding was contrary to expectation. Since you know what mainly affects the elderly, experts expected an increase in the percentage of deaths in older age groups. I'm just going to stop there for a second. That makes sense. Since it affects the elderly, we would expect the deaths of the elderly to spike, right? Well, that didn't happen. Continuing on. However, this increase is not seen from the CDC data. In fact, the percentages of deaths among all age groups remain relatively the same. Presenting data from February to September, she noted that each week, before and after the impact of you know what, an average of over 60,000 individuals die per week. So 50 to 70,000 deaths per week is normal. It is to be expected, she said. The latest weekly report from the CDC notes that in week 46 of 2020, only 1,260 had you know what deaths listed as an underlying or contributing cause of death. Comparing deaths from 2014 to 2020, Briand then demonstrated that whilst the data recorded a slight spike in 2020, there were only 11,292 more deaths than 2018. Thus, the COVID spike was found to be consistent with both seasonal and historical trends. Now, let me just stop there again. We're told by the CDC that as of today, 262,000 people have died of you know what. And yet the data shows when you analyze it that there are only another 11,000 deaths. Continuing on, taking 2018 as an example, Briand pointed out that, quote, the pattern of seasonal increase in the total number of deaths is a result of the rise in deaths by all causes, with heart disease, respiratory diseases, influenza, and pneumonia, end quote, being the three leading causes of death. Yet when examining 2020's data in the seasonal period, she found that you know what related deaths exceeded deaths from heart diseases, which was unusual since heart disease, quote, has always prevailed as the leading cause of deaths, end quote. Heart disease, she is saying, has always prevailed in the US as the leading cause of deaths. But now that's changed. It's changed in 2020. Continuing on, comparing the 2020 figures to the corresponding period in 2018, they show that in 2020, quote, instead of the expected drastic increase across all causes, there was a significant decrease in deaths due to heart disease. Even more surprising, this sudden decline in deaths is observed for all other causes, end quote. The JHU newsletter article stated that the, quote, trend is completely contrary to the pattern observed in all previous years, end quote. So we have a trend that is opposed to the trend that we've seen in all previous years. And this new trend just happened to begin in 2020. Continuing on, it also observes that, quote, the total decrease in deaths by other causes almost exactly equals the increase in deaths by you know what. Stopping here again, all of this points to foul play. All of it points to foul play. Continuing, Hence, according to Dr. Briand, the you know what death toll is misleading. And this is a quote, the you know what death toll is misleading. Deaths due to heart diseases, respiratory diseases, influenza, and pneumonia may instead be recategorized as being due to you know what, end quote. In the weeks in April with the highest reported number of deaths, the rise in you know what deaths almost exactly mirrored the decrease in the leading causes of deaths. Let me say that again. In the weeks in April with the highest reported number of deaths, the rise in you know what deaths almost exactly mirrored the decrease in the leading causes of deaths. So this means that heart disease, respiratory disease, pneumonia, these leading deaths decreased in an almost exact proportion to the reported deaths by you know what. Continuing on, she concluded with a number of summary statements. Quote, by the CDC's own account, the deaths of children have been less than in each of the last 5 flu seasons. Very strange. End quote. Of course, the very strange is my addition. Quote, for 3 of the 4 weeks where you know what deaths were reported have been higher than heart disease deaths, the number of deaths due to heart disease, influenza and pneumonia, chronic respiratory disease, and more decreased, end quote. Quote, all this points to the reason we have a higher number of reported you know what deaths among older individuals than younger individuals is simply because every day in the US, older individuals die in higher numbers than younger individuals, end quote. Briand further commented, quote, the data doesn't show that older individuals are dying in a higher proportion to total deaths than usual. We also found evidence that COVID-19 death numbers were misleading. We found evidence some deaths caused by diseases of the heart, chronic lower order respiratory diseases, flu and pneumonia, and more were simply reclassified as you know what deaths. So we've got false reporting going on. We've got misclassification going on. We've got deaths recorded as due to you know what that are not actually caused by you know what. Continuing on, the American Institute for Economic Research commented on the findings, saying that the, quote, accounting error regarding you know what deaths has caused mass hysteria and misinformed public policy, closing down communities to fight you know what, that according to the data has had no significant contribution to total deaths, reduces our overall capacity to build a healthy society, end quote. Quote, all of this points to no evidence that you know what created any excess deaths. Total death numbers are not above normal death numbers. We've found no evidence to the contrary, end quote, Dr. Briand concluded. So the total number of deaths in the US has remained constant for the past several years, and it has continued this year to remain constant. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that we've been lied to. It tells us that we've been manipulated. And then the question becomes why? What's behind this? Well, as I said earlier, there are people in positions of power who want to agitate against America, who want to reform society. They want to remake society in their image. And it includes losing our freedoms. It includes losing our freedom to move about. It includes things like contact tracing, forced vaccinations, restrictions on religious freedom. This is all happening very, very fast, okay? And the reason I felt called to upload this live video is because, again, we have got to stand together and in a just manner, using the appropriate means and agents, we need to put a stop to this. We have got to get back to normal. We can no longer let the government dictate how we're going to eat our turkey dinner, how we're going to celebrate our Christmas, how we're going to worship God. We can no longer let the government dictate how we're going to live our lives, all right? This has gone way beyond what it should be allowed to, what it should have ever been allowed. So please spread this information far and wide. Go to LifeSite News, reread this article written by Michael Haynes, right? Michael Haynes. So if you just search, for example, for Johns Hopkins University and Michael Haynes LifeSite News, it'll pop right up. Reread this and decide for yourself what all this means. Dr. Genevieve Briand studied the data very closely. She analyzed it, and that was her findings. Thanks for watching. Please share this information, and God bless.